This is Professor Ludlum. This is the Law of International Business Transactions, LS 4533. Today we're looking at Chapter 11, Regulating Unfair Competition. Let's suppose you have a basic problem. You start out in Portugal where you've produced wine and you need to sell it in Berlin, Germany. Now, assuming you're doing it for a profit, if you sell your wine for $10 a bottle in Portugal, how much should be the price when you sell it in Berlin? Well, at a minimum, it should be the regular market price in Portugal, the $10, plus the cost of transportation. To sell it any cheaper than that means you're losing money, and that is unfair competition. That's what we call dumping. So let's suppose what would happen. Why would Portugal sell their bottles of wine so cheap for $4 if they're selling it for $10 at their home market? In the short term, there might be an opportunity to do that. This would be the idea of market entry pricing, where you discount an item heavily in order to get some interest in the market. But in the long term, why would you keep the price so low if you're selling it for $10 in the market in Portugal? The only conceivable idea that you would have in order to sell it for so cheap is that you're trying to destroy your competition. Once your competitors in Germany go broke, what would you do to the price of wine? Well, naturally, after the destructive part of pricing and harming your competitors, once your competitors go broke, then you raise the price up beyond $4, past $10, so that you have kind of a monopoly power in the market. And that's what we mean by dumping. When goods are dumped, it doesn't mean that they're getting rid of them. It means their purpose in selling them cheap is to drive out their competitors. How do you know when we're dumping? The magic words for us in America is less than fair value. LTFV, less than fair value. Well, what is fair value? Well, the way we perceive fair value is, again, the price you're selling it for at your home market plus the cost of transportation. That would be the fair value. Otherwise, there would be no incentive to sell it. If you're selling it cheaper than fair value, it means you're trying to harm your competitors, not trying to benefit the consumer. Now, we have a variety of different problems that can occur to make this comparison. Because remember, we're comparing it, how much do you sell it in your home market compared to how much do you sell the product for in the foreign market? Well, you have special problems here. For example, what if your home country doesn't buy this good? If you only sell it for export, it becomes difficult to make comparisons. Or what if your home country is not a free market, where the market sets the price, but instead the government sets the price, perhaps arbitrarily? What if you don't get any cooperation from the firms in the foreign country to determine a market price? And our magic solution for this is what we call constructed markets. Remember, constructed from 3113, every time we use the word constructed, it means the law made it up out of nothing. So a constructed market means there literally wasn't a market, but we're interpreting that to serve like a market. And so we estimate the prices. And so we start with an estimate of what we expect the home market would have paid for the product, and then compare that to the price you sell it for overseas. The Byrd Amendment is a perfectly good example of an idea that started out in Congress, made sense, was completely rational, and of course Congress killed it. The Byrd Amendment's named after Senator Byrd, who is known for two things. One is for serving in the Senate till he was almost age 100, I believe. And second is prior to becoming a senator, he was a recruiter for the Ku Klux Klan. So an interesting person, to say the least. His idea was we should take the special taxes that we put on dumped goods. Again, we raise the prices through taxes to make the price fair in the marketplace. We should take those taxes and directly subsidize the firms that are being harmed by cheap imports. That actually makes sense. We take the taxes from dumped goods and take that money and directly support the industries that are being harmed by cheap imports. It makes sense. The problem was Congress really wanted somewhere else to spend that money and not be obligated to have to spend it on the specific U.S. firms. And so it naturally died in 2007 and was not extended. Now, if you're thinking about dumping and then implementing dumping taxes on those cheap imports to raise their price, the idea is, how can we do that when GATT already forced us to reduce all those trade barriers? Well, GATT has an escape clause, again, very loosely worded, but again, it's the idea that if your if your industries are being harmed through cheap imports, then you can violate your free trade agreements that you've made with these other countries. Again, it's short term, and short term for us is 4 years. In America, we don't call them safeguards. Instead, our statute describes them as positive adjustments, but it means exactly the same thing. So that even though we've made a free trade agreement, suppose with Canada, if Canada is dumping a certain good in America's market, we can raise taxes on the Canadian good specific that's being dumped, and that's allowable even under our free trade agreement because of the escape clause. Again, I said it was vague. When you look at the statute, there's a lot of wiggle room. What products from a foreign market have a substantial cause of serious injury that's likely or directly competitive with an imported product? Awful lot of wiggle room there to determine when a specific good is harmful and when it is not. Again, it doesn't give you a percentage price difference. It doesn't say the amount of money involved. Again, it uses vague terms like substantial and serious injury that give you a lot of latitude as far as when you implement it and when you do not. Besides taxes put on cheap imports to make the markets again competitive for domestically produced goods, we also have a policy called TAA, Trade Adjustment Assistance. Trade Adjustment Assistance, the easiest way I can describe it is it's kind of like an unemployment program. Again, it benefits the out-of-work workers that are harmed as long as they can demonstrate that the reason that they're losing their jobs is because of cheap imports. What's unique about trade adjustment assistance is not only that it benefits the worker, but it can help the company as well. Because again, it's not just that the workers are going to be out of a job due to cheap imports, but the business itself may lose money or go completely bankrupt. And trade adjustment assistance can help the owners of the business as well as the workers. Again, it's designed to compensate those that are being harmed by cheap imports. Again, the key is you've got to demonstrate not just that you were losing money, but the reason you were losing money is imports that are being sold at less than fair value. And again, that's difficult for the individual firm to demonstrate that these goods are being sold cheaper in another country, those kind of things. Again, there's a lot of problems of questions of fact that have to be determined, but certainly there's benefits out there for both the firms and the individual workers that are harmed by cheap imports.